Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy.
Well, hello there. It's Dr. Gemma from Under the Floods.
No, what I just said was, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma from Under the Floods. But I'm not. Welcome to the Cognitive Podcast. This is episode 144, which I'm going to tell you right now. It was named by a good friend of the podcast, our own Maridee. And the name of this episode is, thank you, Maridee, Bring on the Locusts. Because I have to tell you, just when you think you've reported on just about everything, you have this week. So, welcome to episode 144. I'm so glad to have you along. Your comments are always welcome. And you can comment either on our blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can find our group on Ravelry and comment there. I love the comments. Let's see. Well, it's been quite a week, as you can tell, so I'm making flood jokes for obvious reasons. We have weathered Hurricane Hillary or Tropical Storm Hillary or Cyclone Hillary at some moments. It's been very weird. But thank you for everybody for all the encouraging comments as we were trying to get through this. I really appreciated that. As I speak to you today, or as I chortle immoderately to you today, we are well past the problem that was Hillary, that is the tropical storm yesterday. But I did get some really wonderful comments yesterday and a lot of support and love in the social media, and I deeply, deeply appreciate it. So that's the first warm thanks. But also I want to thank On Your Trike Somerton, who saw my picture of the watermelon slice that I painted and said I should frame it and put it in the kitchen. Thank you so much. That warms my heart. I actually want to have another go at it because of the green stripe on the bottom being so regular. But it is very cute. And it does look very graphic. So even the regular stripe is not that huge a problem. So thank you On Your Trike Somerton, because I really appreciated the comment. As always, I want to thank everybody who is supporting CFR 2023. I want to point out that Gus Rudnick from Crocodile Crafting sent us along a very nice donation of the goodie bags. I want to point that out and thank her very much. Crocodile Crafting is very small in terms of some of the Etsy stores you find, but I really liked her stuff. So I just want to point out it was really good of her to agree to participate. I also want to thank our own Chris with the Beautiful Children, who is sending us some goodie bag treats, which I would love to tell you about, but I won't. And if you're keeping up on the notes over on Ravelry, you can find out what she's sending us, but I'm not going to tell you because I'm not ruining the goodie bags for you. Meanwhile, if you're interested in the Cognitive Fiber Retreat, we're up to about 53 people, and payments are due by September 1st. And I took 53 because I know we're going to lose a few people, and I'm not worried about it. So I just said, you're all in. So anybody who's been told they're on the list, the 51, 2, and 3, you know who you are after September 1st. But everybody else before September 1st, to be honest, if we're only going to have 53 people, I'm going to let them in anyway. Because really, this is about the vendors. The more, the better for the vendors. The info thread is in the show notes. It says Cognitive Fiber Retreat. All info is right here. And here is a link, and it'll take you to the thread on Ravelry that has everything you need to know. And I'm really, really looking forward to that one. The vendors, well, I'm working on that. because I have yarn from all the vendors and I'm trying to make things out of all of that. So, and more about that as we go further actually into what's on my hooks and needles. You can still see the picture of the beautiful sea glass colorway being made for us by Dizzy Blonde Studios. As soon as we get a picture from Laser Sheep, she's making us a colorway, as I understand. So as soon as we get that picture, that will also be in the show notes. Not there yet, but if any of the rest of you want to make us a dedicated colorway, you betcha. And don't forget that Brenda Castile, who's one of our designers, good stuff, she is going to be making a shawl pattern for us, hopefully to be paired with the sea glass colorway. I really am looking forward to this, I'm just going to say. The mini skein swap is on. Remember, 25 gram bundles of sock or fingering weight. And there are patterns on the info thread over on Ravelry if you're wondering what to do with all those mini skeins. I have to tell you, I loved the last time we did this. I made the coolest cowl, which I believe might have been by Brenda. I think it was by Brenda. So save those mini skeins, kids. And the goodie bags are in progress. I've got a few things piled up next to me. Again, I can't actually order any special bag for these until we get the payments. So guys, if you're attending CFR, please send your 35. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. What is on my hooks and needles? You may be wondering. Well, it's been a pretty eventful week. Number one, the weather. Number two, Sunnybank was this week, and you may notice I was not there. And I'm so grateful because of the weather this week. But also we're catching up a little bit on the finances, I have to be honest. And Junior's going off to college. So I'll probably talk about that somewhere in the blather. At any rate, I have had beaucoup time to work on things. First of all, because you may remember, Trusty the sewing machine is down, and I have not taken her to a shop. That was supposed to happen this weekend, but, weather, which is the excuse for everything right now. So, I did, however, finish the lane splitter skirt. Okay, I love it. I don't just like it. I knew when I first saw that years ago on Knitty that it was a winner, but I just didn't see myself making it because I don't know why. I just didn't. I don't think I was confident enough as a knitter back in, that came out in 2009, I think. I did not feel that confident. I don't know why. I'd made baby blankets with the same pattern, essentially, that is knitting on a bias from corner to corner of a long rectangle. Now, this is a slightly unusual pattern because it sets you up to have one purl row every 3 knitted rows. It's so handsome. Oh my gosh, it's so handsome. Everybody did it in Noro. There were a few exceptions, but Noro was made for this. The Noro, either Silk Garden, the worsted weight, or I can't remember the name, Kura. It's escaping me. Anyway, I'm just thinking of 50 Japanese words that begin with KUR because I've been watching too much anime lately, if there is such a thing. At any rate, there it is. The long self-striping worsted weights of Noro were made for this. First of all, I thought, well, the lady in the pictures who's the designer over on Knitty, she's a little petite thing and it's going to look horrible on me. It just won't extrapolate to my size. I thought all sorts of stupid things. However, it came out so satisfying. Now remember, you're measuring from the hip. So I started out of fear that I have a lot back there. And remember, I started this a while back. So I did the size 44 inch. And I thought, this is going to be way too long. Every time I held it against myself, it looked like it was going to be down to my ankles. And I thought, oh, this is so not working. And then, you cast on a certain number to get the right length. And then you're supposed to knit it for that number. So I was supposed to knit the longest side of the rectangle on the bias to be 44 inches. And I said, it's just going to look like a bag. And I looked at the pictures and I read the instructions. And there's a lot to read there. You really have to follow that one. Because there were a few places, like how you do the waistband, that I was just missing. Anyway, so in the instructions, I was supposed to go the long side 44 inches. But then it says 0 to, I forget how many inches of ease. It might have been 6 inches. And I thought, no. So what I did was I knitted it to 42 inches, and I knew in the blocking it would make 44 inches. And that is exactly what happened. And I was all ready to measure it out. I didn't. I really didn't. I just stuck it in the sink, with some soak to clean it and cool water. And I left it there and let it really soak up water. Then I squeezed it between towels so that I would not felt it in any way. Frankly, I just hung it over my clothes drying rack and I just let the ends hang down and it came out perfect. I went over and pulled at the edges a little bit from time to time because it tends to, if you let it hang like that, the short end will sort of form a U with the very edges hanging down further than the middle. So every so often I went over and pulled the center down and evened it out. It came out great. Corian. There we go. Noro Corian or Noro Silk Garden. There we go. Anyway, it came out great. And I just put it in my lap and I used the cotton yarn that I was using for the waistband to stitch the edge close. You stitch the short edges together so that, you get a cylinder out of your big rectangle. And then I slipped it over my hips and I thought, wow, it was really good. It looked really good. There was a picture on Instagram, I believe, and Facebook, if you follow those. But it shocked me because it looked so good. And I thought, wow. And then I thought, well, how much do I need to do on the waistband? Because it really fit with just a slight bit of ease around my bustle. And remember, I stretched it to 44 inches, but this is wool. It's going to spring back a little, but the bias keeps it from springing back hugely. Anyway, so then I carefully went through the instructions for the knitted waistband and said, I am going to do that. I had thought that the skirt would be too long to do the knitted waistband because I had not read those instructions carefully. So what you do is you pick up, I think it's 3 stitches per inch along the upper long edge that you decide is going to be your upper edge. No, I didn't bother with that. That would have been something like 147 stitches. No. I'm more confident than that. I whipped out my Lion Brand Snow White cotton yarn in worsted weight, and I just picked up stitches as I felt comfortable picking them up. Why? Because as long as it was wide enough for me to get my waist into, then I was going to use elastic, and that would bring it down to the waistband I need. So in other words, it doesn't matter. As long as the knitted waistband was wide enough to get over my broadest parts, then it just didn't matter if it was too wide or too, it doesn't matter. You have elastic. You're going to pull it in. So I just didn't worry. I don't know how many stitches I came out with. It wasn't 147. I think it was more like 110 or something, if that many. But it went together very nicely. And I just, knitted the waistband on long circulars. And I believe the skirt was using, I'm trying to remember, I think the skirt was a size 10 needle. But on the waistband, I used a size 8. And that went just fine. It looked all gappy and pulled apart when I was close to the actual knitting with the silk garden. And then as I knitted it longer and longer, because you knit it out to 2.5 inches in 2x2 rib, it pulled in very nicely. And then what you do is you fold that under and you whip stitch it to the inside of the piece knitted in the Nora. And that worked great. They don't make any provision to leave an opening, but I would if I were you, because you got to get that elastic in there somehow. I used the 2-inch elastic that was recommended. Now, because I do a lot of waistbands because of my skirt sewing, I know my waistband measurement, okay? And so what I have learned is I cut my waistband pieces to 33 inches. And that gives me just enough negative ease. But I'm usually using 1/2-inch elastics. This was a 2-inch wide elastic. And got it at Joann's, in case you're wondering. It comes pre-bundled into 2-yard slices, and that was a good amount for me because I'm using 33 inches. So that'll be 2 waistbands with a few bonus inches. Oh well, that's pretty good. They do not sell it by the yard at Joann's. That is too irregular a size of elastic. So I just bought the 2-yard segment, and it's not real expensive. I don't remember what it was, but it's not real expensive. So normally I would cut that for 33 inches. This time, I looked at it and I said, though, that's a tight waistband with a 2-inch solid piece, as opposed to typically I have 2 pieces in separate channels that are 1/2 inch each. So I thought, if I cut this, I'm going to cut it long and see how that goes. And I can cut it shorter if I need to, but if I cut it too short, I'm obviously not going to be able to lengthen it. So I cut it to 36 inches. And that just worked really nicely. It's tight without being constricting. So it's holding onto my waist very nicely. So you can see the pictures of that. And as you can tell in those photos, I am pretty darn satisfied with myself. I had to hand stitch it. I will be going back over the waistband elastic. So I did leave it open because I'll go over that with my trusty sewing machine when I get that fixed. But I hand stitched it. And I just want to reinforce it. I love this, and I put it on with bare legs, as you can see in the pictures. It fit beautifully and comfortably. What really shocked me is it was perfectly comfortable. It was about 85 degrees when I was wearing that, and I thought I'd be running with sweat wearing a wool skirt. No, it is a loose enough gauge that I had plenty of good airflow in that skirt. So to my surprise, I actually can wear it in warmer weather. I really figured it was a winter skirt. In all the pictures you see, people have leggings or stockings under it. I think because it is wool, I will have leggings or stockings under it most of the time because of friction, and I am worried about it rubbing through. Corian and Silk Garden, because they're Noro, they tend to be sort of thick, thin, and I do worry about that wearing through. However, I am reassured by Stashy Mama that this skirt wears well. I don't know, but I love this skirt and I cannot recommend it enough. And I am one of the larger models I've seen wearing it, and it looks great on me. Again, you got to think about the ease you want in it. And because it is Noro and it is on the bias, it's going to stretch and it isn't going to spring back as much because Noro is usually a blend of things that don't have a lot of memory like silk. So you have to keep in mind, I don't remember what's in Corian, but this was Silk Garden that I'm wearing, and Silk Garden obviously has silk in it. It's got a lovely hand for this skirt. So if you've got about 6 skeins of Noro worsted weight anything hanging around the house, this is a winner. This came out so good. In the meanwhile, I was really yearning, I think I've said before, for some popcorn knitting. And so I whipped out my skein from Oink Pigments in the Disco yarn, sock yarn weight, which means it has stellina in it. Mine has silver with stellina in it. I'm looking down at it as I speak. And I started on the simple scallop shawl, and I just said, this thing, by the way, blocks out hugely from the base of your neck down to your tailbone. So I was working on it, and I just kept doing 3 rows here and there because it's kind of a 3-row repeat. And as I said last week, you have to get through the first 7 rows in this because they come out looking very weird if you're not used to what you're doing here. And then in about row 7, you're going to see what you're doing. And it's very nice and very easy. And this is one of those patterns where you can do it from the written pattern, but if you know how to read a chart for crochet, that is going to really pay off with this one. So I wasn't paying it much mind. I'm thinking as long as I get this done in time for the fiber retreat. And I'm just doing 3 rows here and there. And to my shock, it ran out in my hand. I finished the last repeat and I looked down and I had no yarn left. I was like, what the heck? So I finished these simple scallops and I just love it. I have not blocked it because it's huge, even unblocked. And I have blocked previous iterations of this. And I will tell you, they come out big, airy, and lacy. This is a fantabulous pattern for a summer or spring shawl, let me tell you. And this is a shawl. It's not a shawlette. This is quite a good size baby. That's the effect of doing the shells, that you get a very big, lacy, open shawl. So someday I may block this to get something more out of it. But frankly, I threw it on and was really happy, which was good because it got to be in the hurricane with me. Thanks, oink! So I just love it. Meanwhile, in the stash toss, 8 skeins in since January 1st, 2023 versus, are you ready? 47 skeins out. Crochet, the way it eats the yarn. So I'll get on to why. Of course, that simple scallop shawl was one of them this week. I'd already, I think, counted in last week the skeins from the lane splitter, because last week I had finished the major knitting on it and I just added the cotton skein, I believe. The rest of that cotton is probably going to be made into some knitted knockers, but that's for later. So in the meantime, you may remember I was working on 2 pairs of my Simplicity 8558 shorts. They are still stalled, waiting for the return of my sewing machine, which in turn is waiting for me to even take it down to the machine store. I didn't want to do it today because I'm not sure what condition the roads between here and there are in. And I just didn't have that kind of energy today. I'll probably take it down Thursday morning. But I did progress mightily on the Llama Love sweater. This is from Bad Wolf Girl Knits. I love this. I just love it. Now this is so different to the way I've been making my worsted weight sweaters that Megan Regan, who is Bad Wolf Girl Knits, Megan uses a very different gauge than I use. She uses a lot of color work, which I usually just have been doing plain sweaters. And I've done my fair share of Fair Isle at this point, but only on smaller things like hats and scarves and cowls. And I've wanted to do a Fair Isle collar on a sweater. So this was the logical thing because, as you can see, I have that fabulous foxglove pink from Lisa Souza. That is her superwash worsted weight merino. And it comes in 500 yard cakes, which, let me tell you, I love. I probably misquoted the price last week, and I should look it up. But I love this yarn. This is like butter flowing through your hands. It is so soft. The hand on it is fabulous. For the contrast colors, I am using Knit Picks Mighty Stitch, mainly because that is what the designer was using for her pattern. Now, she says this is a DK weight sweater, but no, everybody's making it in worsted. It doesn't matter if you're getting gauge, and I am, and this is an unusual gauge for me. This sweater has been so much fun and so educational all the way around. Now, it starts from the top of the collar down, and usually I don't do that. Usually I start below the collar and then add the collar later. So it's very cool to have the collar, and it's a very nice fitted collar here at the 41-inch chest size that I'm making. And usually I use size 9 needles. I'm using size 7s. I'm getting gauge beautifully on this, just absolutely bang on perfect gauge. Now the thing there too is to do the neckline, I wanted the raised back of the neck, and in the usual pattern I use the brick. You do that by not knitting the collar, and then by starting at the top of the back of the neck, and you're knitting side to side, and then you join the whole thing when you finish those short rows at the back, and you join it all into a circle, and down you go, and then you come back later and you put on the collar. And I like that because you don't get gaps the way you might with wrap and turn short rows. However, I decided to take the short row option on this sweater, and let me tell you, Megan Regan gives you a lot of good options on her sweaters, and I really like that. However, if you're a new sweater knitter, I wouldn't necessarily do a Bad Wolf Girl Knit sweater as my first sweater. I would want to do a top down in something mindless like the brick, because I want you to get the feel for how a top down sweater works, because Megan gives you so many fitting options. And I think it would have scared me. In fact, it probably did. That's probably why I did the brick first. But I think it would have scared me if I'd had this many options. There are a fair number of sweaters that are good this way. But I have to tell you, if you're comfortable knitting top downs, you really want to go over and look at Bad Wolf Girl Knits patterns, because she has so many cool patterns and a lot of fangirl graphics in her Fair Isle. All right. So I did the German short rows, and I went to the link from Pearl Soho, which is another great resource on the internet. That Pearl Soho has so many good instructions, and I just loved it. Okay, and so I started with the collar, and I did the German short rows. So then I got on to the color work, and I was tootling along using the first option. Now, I only did the single llama version. There's a version called the double llama where the 2 llamas face each other, and there's a repeat of that. I think 8 repeats of the 2 llamas facing each other. But the sizing on that was going to give me a less fitted sweater than I wanted. So I went with the single llama, which looks like a llama parade going around your neck. And that allowed me to do a 41-inch bust. I would have had to do either, I think, a 45 or a 38. And I wasn't comfortable doing either one of those. And yeah, I could have done the math probably, but no. I didn't want to do that. Okay, now the next thing is, Megan's sweaters tend to be in color work all the way down from the base of your neck, below the bust line, and onto the central tube of the sweater. And I don't like that. If you're going to do a Fair Isle sweater, typically Fair Isles as pullovers for women are very, very loose, unless you taper the body, and they are patterned all the way down. And I do like that. But it can look a little awkward to my taste if you are, shall we say, built in a mature way, and you have the wrong thing going across the broadest part of your breast. And I looked at the finished objects, and they mostly look good on this one. Not a lot of people have done this sweater, which surprises me. Usually her sweater patterns are just go viral really fast because of the fangirl elements, I think, a lot of the time. But anyway, I looked at it and I said, no, I really don't like that look on someone who has the same dimensions as me and who is using the same amount of negative ease. Now, if you did these sweaters in positive ease, sure. I think that looks okay because you don't really notice too much the curve around the breast. But if you're doing it with a little negative ease, it looks a little awkward to me. And that's me. Like, if you're okay with it, please pardon me. This is just my opinion. This is not about the quality of the designer's work because I think her designs are awesome. So I looked at it and said, I'm just not comfortable. I'm going to have these blue llamas trotting across the widest part of me. And I didn't like the balance that would strike with the larger white llamas that are above them. So I went looking at Fair Isle patterns on Ravelry. I just started looking at as many pullover sweaters with Fair Isle around the neckline to sort of see what's going on here with me. And I realized that I much prefer the traditional collar look of Fair Isle patterns. In other words, much of the time when you see a sweater with a Fair Isle yoke, the yoke stops above the widest part of the breast, and then you just have solid color going across the widest part. And I said, I really like that. I like that much better, but I wanted to preserve these big white llamas because the whole point of the sweater is the llamas. Let's be honest here. Now, also, please keep in mind that wherever you put color work, you're going to draw the eye of the viewer. And this is why I think I find that look a little unflattering when you have a very full chest and you have negative ease. That you can just get some awkward shapes in the wrong angles, is all I'm going to say. And I'm not size biased. I'm the one with the generous chest. But I know what I like, and to me, I don't like that as much, okay? So it's okay if you don't agree with me. But I opted instead, I wanted to put a small graphic under the feet of the llamas. I wanted them to look kind of grounded. And it makes a nice finish for the yoke collar look. So I said, how am I going to do that? Now, meanwhile, above the llamas, I have a row of, well, really 3 rows of little red hearts. And this is right off Megan's pattern. And underneath that, some blue coins or blue lozenges. Okay, blue circles, whatever you want to call them. And I wanted to bring the red and the blue back, but I did not want it to be many rows thick. So I turned to my 2 favorite Fair Isle books, which are, in no particular order, Alice Starmore's Book of Fair Isle Knitting and Mary Jane Mucklestone's 200 Fair Isle Motifs. And they both have a beautiful assortment of small patterns. And I went for one from 200 Fair Isle Motifs. And I really liked it because it is 5 rows from top to bottom. And it is these little arrows. And what you do is the top and bottom 2 rows you do in one color according to Mucklestone's recommendation. And then the middle row you do in the other. And I just love the way that looked because the llamas are marching, if you look in the picture, from the viewer's perspective. the llamas are marching to the right. So I made the arrows go to the left. And I just love the way it came out. It brings the blue and the red back in a nice balance. When I tried it on, it was fitting me just perfectly. Everything was landing where I wanted it to. So I continued on. Now you go 47 rows, I believe, from the bottom of the collar to where you divide. And that, I measured everything. That seemed to be working well for me. So I went the 47 rows, but what I did for about the last 7 or 8 rows, it's just that solid, beautiful pink foxglove color from Lisa Souza. So I'm very, very happy. I've divided now, and I'm working my way down the body. Now I do like, in this pattern, the 2 motifs I left out. I like them a lot. The red hearts, well, they would be pink in the original, but there would be red in mine. And the littler blue llamas. I really like them. I am considering sticking the blue llamas at my wrists and maybe the red hearts just above where I begin the ribbing for the bottom hem. However, if you do that, you have to be aware you're drawing the viewer's eyes right to your belly. So I'm thinking about that. But I really like those motifs, and I'd like to bring them back or get them into the sweater somewhere. But to say I am happy with this sweater so far is a gross understatement, and I really recommend this pattern. Now, meanwhile, I want to give some equal time to Laser Sheep. I want to be wearing something by her. I was going to make wristers out of the one skein of her yarn that I still have in my stash. I've made socks previously from her stuff, and I've unfortunately worn through them. But I looked at the wristers and said no, because the BB-8 yarn pattern I have, it's stripes in orange and white and black and gray. And I said, I won't wear those, though. They won't go with anything I own. So I thought, no, those guys have got to be socks. So I did wind that skein today, and I'm sitting here admiring it because the colors are just gorgeous. But the colors are also at my feet in a rolled skein. So hopefully I will have those socks. But I'm also waiting, if Laser Sheep gives us a dedicated colorway, I will also be making that into something, and probably a shawl that I will wear. And it will have to share my neck with the other 2 shawls, that is the Oink shawl and the shawl from the Sea Glass that hopefully Brenda will give us a pattern for. I know she will. I shouldn't say hopefully, because Brenda's really reliable that way. And Brenda's also got more ideas for patterns than, Popaz rosary beads. I mean, she's just loaded with these things. So I'm really looking forward to this. I will just be changing shawls a lot that day, I suspect. But I'm really, really hoping we get a cool enough day for me to wear this fantastic sweater that I'm making from Lisa Souza's stuff. Yay! Okay, enough of that madness. Oh yeah, the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery. Nah, not there yet. Not there yet. But I'm hoping I will be before the end of the summer. Probably I should hurry. All right. Meanwhile, I did give you the links for the 2 Fair Isle knitting books. You really should have those books on your shelf if you want to do any kind of color work. I can't recommend them enough. Also, I just found out today that Mucklestone has another book of color work motifs. She has one for Scandinavian knitting. Yeah, it's on my list on Amazon because I'm definitely going to get it. There's no question. As for Alice Starmore, anything the woman writes, I recommend. Seriously, anything the woman writes. Okay, I have not been spinning, but I have been clogging my sewing machine with Minerva fur, I suspect. I blew out the feed dog's cat fur, came flying out. Oh, it needed anyway to be oiled because it hasn't been oiled in about 4 years, seriously. On to the strategy. Well, Ben Franklin. I have to say this, since I'm getting all sorts of inspiration from Poor Richard's Almanac, a meme floated across my ken about the founding fathers being Christian. No, they weren't. They just weren't. I'm sorry, they weren't. Get over it. They were raised in essentially a Christian state. They are British citizens, and Britain is Anglican in its government, that they have a religious orientation in the government, with the king being the head of church and state. We all know where that's from. I'm not going to go through the history. But look, guys, there's no way they could have agreed with that and then had a revolution. So you have to get over this. But I have to say, I was roaming around in Poor Richard's Almanac And I found two statements that I found meaningful, just so you're clear about the Founding Fathers and the separation of church and state. Statement number one, the way to see by faith is to shut the eye of reason. You could almost believe that's good, except we're these days calling Franklin's era the age of reason, and we're calling it that for a reason. You know, they do little things like develop scientific methodology, and they start to say that you have to explore the universe, and you can't use the Bible or any handbook of faith to determine science. You just have to separate those things. So no, I think that's a pretty unambiguous statement for Ben Franklin. The way to see by faith is to shut the eye of reason. And then he says also, in the affairs of this world, men are saved not by faith, but by the lack of it. I think that pretty much spells it out. So for those of you who want to cling to the idea that the Founding Fathers were Christian, get over it. Oh yeah, what else did Franklin do? Well, let's see. He did some of the key research on lightning and electricity that holds up to this age as valuable. And he spent the years of his life after the Continental Congress campaigning against slavery. So, you know, I'm with you there, Dr. Franklin. Okay, however, since we had the hurricane and all that this week, I'm going to use the tried and true statement from Poor Richard. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it's been an interesting week for that. So I'm just going to say, look, this is about being proactive, but it's about a huge scale of proactivity when you start talking about things like hurricanes. That one of the things I grew up with was a father, I should say one of the people I grew up with was a father who was in real estate and insurance, and who for my whole childhood would drive us around and comment on the insurance risk of houses. But one of the most wonderful things I ever saw, so to speak, we were upstream in an area near Holland, Pennsylvania, and they built in a riverbed. It was a creek bed, I believe. The Delaware is not up there. And my father was driving me to school one day, and he saw it, and he stopped the car. He pulled over, and he goes, "Oh, my God." And he jumps out of the car, and he says, "What are they thinking?" And I said, "Dad, I'm going to be late for school." He said, "Look at this. Look at it. They're building in a riverbed." And I said, "Dad, really? I'm going to be late for school." Okay, what happened? 2 years later, it all got washed away. You know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. What my father was telling me is you don't put a house in a riverbed. They do it in California all the time. You know, I'm not even going to go there. I don't sell insurance here. I did sell it in Pennsylvania, but those days long behind me. But you know, what Dad taught me is the logic there. And this is why we have insurance, because insurance runs on the logic you will have loss. And so you will need to be paid for your loss. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And when you're thinking about proactivity, you know, I talk about it on the little day-to-day stuff. About, you know, at work, divide your work, like Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, you know, you want to stay in the proactive place where you're doing the work that is important but not urgent. But there is another aspect of your life where you're doing that. And that's the longer-term decisions. What does all this mean? Well, I have to tell you, this week, I'm sitting on a granite mountain on a hillside. And so we were watching all this news about Hurricane Hillary. And frankly, we just said it's not going to mean anything to us because we're sitting on a granite mountainside and we're not going anywhere, you know, and we've been through earthquakes, we've been through floods before. It doesn't really affect us up here. So I have to say that's what came home for me this week is when we're talking about proactivity, we're talking about it in the little decisions most of the time, but you have to realize it's in the big decisions too. It's in things like we're in our 60s, we have a teenage son. He's not driving yet. We know he will. And we have trackers on both cars. My husband didn't like that until his car broke down and his phone ran out. And at that point, I used the tracker, found him in the car, noticed they weren't moving and they were late. And we ended up getting AAA out, towing the car, getting it fixed. And that solved that. And also, he now carries one of my phone batteries with him and a small plug so that he can charge his phone. And every now and then, I remind him, recharge the phone battery, so he doesn't run out of charge on his trips. So again, there's the little things like how you handle your working day. But there's also the big things that you really have to think about when you buy a home, where you're locating your home, what the risks are, and are you going to be safe? Oh yeah, trees. I really enjoyed it when they said trees would be uprooted. We're in the desert. Trees? We don't have those. We do. We have some, but not on our property, actually. We don't have any tall trees. We have one at the base of the driveway that we're fond of, a big old locust. But we really never did put in trees because we're on the side of a mountain and we wanted the view. You have to think about this stuff when you buy a house. You have to think about this stuff when you have kids. You have to be able to do a little bit of long-term planning. And it does amaze me because in therapy, all that comes home to roost. I meet the people who didn't do the long-term plan or who took a risk that was a little out of their league. So I'm just going to leave you with, when we talk about proactive behavior, even though my emphasis has always been on the short term, how you get through your working week, I really want to point out it does apply to the long term. It does apply to where you live, how you live. Do you save? Are you ready for emergencies? And I know the definition of emergency or the definition of crisis means it wasn't easy to prepare for. But still, you do your best. All right, into the fluffy books. I'm still roaming around in the Bridgerton books. I do have to admit that I've been watching anime on Netflix. And it's been a little strange. I've been sort of sampling. I'm currently watching the weirdest thing I've ever seen called Thermae Romae. I'm going to do it in in Church Latin Novi. And it's new Roman baths. And it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's a guy in Rome around I think it would be 170 CE. He's in Trajan's reign as emperor. And he designs the thermae, the baths. And he accidentally wakes up in Japan, and he keeps popping back and forth between modern Japan and their bathing system and Rome. I can't imagine why you would even write this, but it is awfully weird fun. The way they portray Romans is the weird fun. But also it's kind of neat because you really sort of see Japanese culture in a very unselfconscious way around baths and bathing. They're very unselfconscious about the way the body looks, whether it's attractive or unattractive. They're very non-judgmental compared to Americans. At the end of each episode, there's a mini documentary about the writer of the manga, who's a woman, traveling to the hot springs of Japan to learn more. And those are worth it. So that's been fun. I just started a thing called Violet Evergarden, which I may stick with. I started watching a thing called My Happy Marriage, which I find a bit bizarre. I don't like the submissive woman wins everything subtext. So I've just been wandering around, is what I would say. And anything else there? No, I'm just going to go into something I really like. Well, I've been working on my relationship with my teeth for a number of reasons that I'm not going to go into, but I am really uncomfortable with a lot of the dental products, like toothpaste. If you read toothpaste, it's a little disturbing what you're putting in your mouth. Mind you, there hasn't been another option for most of my life, so I use toothpaste. And I use it twice a day. And I've gone through different types of toothbrushes and all that. Finally, a dental hygienist recommended the Philips Sonic toothbrush. Got it on Amazon for about $50. We all got them, in fact. We all love them. It's the electric toothbrush you always wanted. It's a little more high speed and high power. It's rechargeable. The plug sits in the bathroom right next to my sink, the recharger. It's really nice. So you always have a charged toothbrush. So no more batteries, which makes me happy. I really like that. So then I was concerned because flossing has gotten more challenging as I've aged. Same hygienist said, oh, you need a water pick. They're more effective than using floss. I don't know if I quite buy that for my back teeth. Actually, I think I do. But I got the water pick portable. And may I say, I love this thing. Now, we got a big one for the boys that has the water tank that you fill and you can use it up and all that sort of thing, and has multiple heads and more than one person can use it. And I got them that for the big bathroom where they tend to brush their teeth, but I wanted something smaller for our back bathroom. So I got the little portable, which is rechargeable. I am in love with this thing. It gives you about 45 seconds of water blast, and it really does blow out stuff from between your teeth in a beautiful way, to the point where I had teeth I couldn't get floss between. I am now getting stuff out of them, and the water pick is doing great. So I'm really, really happy with the water pick portable. You just refill the tank every time you use it. That is no strain. And you recharge it. I actually have let it go 2 weeks before. Actually, I've never had it run out, but I've let it go 2 weeks between recharging. Really, really fond of this thing. In the meantime, I started looking at alternatives to toothpaste when the company Bite, that's B as in boy, I, T as in Thomas E, Bite, just like you think, came out with toothpaste pellets. And I thought, okay, this should have happened a long time ago. These things are nice. They come in a glass jar, a little tiny thing. You can travel with them. They're great because they're not a gel or a liquid on TSA. TSA just registers them as toothpaste pellets. So you carry the little glass jar. You could put them in an envelope if you wanted to, whatever. That's the good news. The bad news is they're not that satisfying. For one thing, there's a huge amount of artificial sweetener in it. Huge amount. They're really sweet. And I don't like that the first ingredient, the primary ingredient is xylitol. However, they do have enamel hardener in them. They do have a fluoride number. Not all of them have fluoride. They believe fluoride is not necessary and the enamel hardener works better. I don't know. But at any rate, they have that. But the high amount of sweetener in it, I'll be honest, if they worked a little better, this wouldn't bother me, but they don't. They advertise you just bite down on them and put them in your mouth. Yeah, well, you bite down, you have two halves sitting in your mouth. So you have to bite down and chew, and you're losing a lot of it. It's going to go into the crevices of your molars, whatever. I don't like that aspect of it. There's no foam on it. Okay, fine. These things, I think, are worth having along to travel with. But to be honest, you probably will get a more satisfying experience if you brush your teeth with baking soda. Now, I can't speak to, it does have that enamel hardener in it and baking soda doesn't. What I've been doing is I have a toothpaste I've gotten from Japan that I quite like that has the same enamel hardener and doesn't have all the sugar that American toothpaste has and doesn't have all the additional chemicals that American toothpaste has, but costs quite a bit. I'm using that for 2 brushings a day, and then I tend to use a Bite for 1 brushing in the middle of the day. The Bite flavors do have some nice flavors like cinnamon and watermelon. That's what I've got, the 2 different ones. And so I feel like in the middle of the day, that's a nice mouthwash refresher. But I'm not real big on the Bite. There are other types. There's one called, I think, Huppy, and they advertise that they foam better than Bite. Put a lid on it. Well, I continue with my tea tastings. I have to say this week I ordered more from Plum Deluxe because they had a sale on the peach flavors. So I did restock, and I tried a couple new ones, and so when I get those, I will review them. One was a peach oolong. For the life of me, I cannot remember what the other one is, but I believe it's a peach black tea blend. I'm not that big on hot teas with peach or caffeine teas with peach, but I thought these were worth it. Also, when I did the first purchase, which I got lovely discounts and free shipping on, they sent me a $10 coupon. So, of course, I went back to the sale, got lovely discounts, $10 off and free shipping. And I also got their autumn sampler, which are 10 little tea bags. Each bag is 2 cups, I think. And they charge you $10 for that. And I ordered that Then they said, based on what you've been ordering from us, we'll do a secret blend for you. And I thought, let's try that. It was $3. So I'm looking forward to all that arriving. But that was the peach sale. It ended yesterday. And meanwhile, I thought I should give you the label for the Plum Deluxe Mindful Morning Earl Grey. I have talked about this before. This is the Lady Grey without the lemon peel. This seems to be one of their regular features, whereas I think the Lady Grey might be seasonal. And I have to ask the question that we're all asking, which is, if you could make Mindful Morning but leave out the lemon peel, why? I would just say put Lady Grey in your regular roundup and drop the Mindful Morning. I mean, really, who is going to say, no, thank you, I don't need lemon peel in my Earl Grey, but I do want you to keep that orange in there? That doesn't make any sense. So all I can say is the Mindful Morning, it's not Lady Grey, it's nice, it's good. And I might be wrong about Lady Grey. I'm not sure how seasonal it is, but I was under the impression that it does go away for a few months every year. However, as we head into winter, I am counting on it to be around. So on to the blather. The pup date, not much. We had some soggy dogs yesterday. The house smelled of wet dog. I did do a new watercolor and I stuck it in there. This is one of Andrea Nelson's quick projects. What it is you draw a dot somewhere on your paper and then you draw curving lines and you make sure they all go through that dot. And so I did, and I put the dot relatively high on the page and then I turned the page sideways and I started coloring it and I realized that the bottom area, which I think she leaves blank on her model that she puts on her Instagram feed, I decided it looked kind of like a road. And then I decided the top part then, the blank part, must be a sky. And then I just started coloring in. And what happened was I realized it is an image in the abstract of what you see when you're running towards home. So actually the name of that one is Running Home. And I kind of like it. I'm not a big fan of abstract. Now it's a bit blobby on the sides because I hadn't pulled the artist tape off it. But I'm really growing. These things that I make tend to grow on me over a few days. And I really quite like this one because it really does look like you're running down this brown road towards that horizon where the dot is. And with that beautiful sky above you. And the rest, I think, are just hills and fields and fence lines. So there you go. Meanwhile, the Hubs date. Well, this was ounce of prevention, pound of cure time because, as you probably have figured out by now, yeah, we were affected by hurricane, later tropical storm Hillary, but this got a little bit funny in its own way. First of all, I was getting nervous Saturday night. It was supposed to hit late Saturday night. And my husband was like, no, we're mellow. But both of us forgot the one truth. Whenever you figure there's going to be a major event, you fill the bathtub with water and you fill the buckets with water. Because usually when we have any major weather event, Southern California Edison uses it as a chance to turn all the electricity off. I'm not going to go into why they do that, but it's their fault, not ours. Now, we have a nice generator that we bought a few years ago, and we've been very happy with. So we did have enough gas to run the generator, so we were feeling pretty safe, but we did forget that when the power goes out, our pumps turn off, which means we may get no running water in the house, and that's kind of what happened. All right, but it got to be a little bit perverse. First of all, I didn't realize we were out of some groceries. And so we did end up going out early on Sunday to get groceries. And the problem is the groceries are in the village of Acton. Now at this point they were telling us there's flash flooding all over the place, underpasses are underwater. So we realized we couldn't go north to the Antelope Valley or south to Santa Clarita without running into some of this. And we knew exactly where we would hit it and be stopped. So we decided we had to go to downtown Acton to get groceries, and downtown Acton floods. We got there just in time. I ran into the grocery store, scooped up eggs and various things, including treats, to be honest, for us. Got into the car, and as we left Acton, we realized it was a little bit dicey getting out of there in our Prius. Fortunately, we made it. We did see cars turning back. The trucks were just moving through it slowly. One of the risks was the trucks kept splashing us and we'd be covered in muddy water and not be able to see, but my husband navigated manfully and we did fine. You can see a picture of me in my rain gear. That is to say, I don't have any because my son took my rain poncho, but he needed it. I have to say, he was doing more outdoor work than I was. But it was cool. It was in the mid-60s. And the problem was it was raining and it was highly windy. And so it was getting cold just because you got wet and then you got cold. So if you look at that picture, I'm wearing my brand new gardening hat, which turned out to be a pretty decent rain hat. I didn't expect that. And I'm wearing my latest pair of wristers that I made in crochet. And I'm also wearing the simple scallops shawl as a scarf. And if you knew to look underneath that, you would see one of my knitted vests and one of my flannel skirts with leggings and knitted socks. So I am pretty homemade outfitted there, and it was very nice. And on the way back, we came uphill into the sort of upper section of Acton by the 14 and decided we got some gas in the car because we needed to. And we stopped for lunch at the local Mexican place, which is well on high ground. So we had this lovely lunch together, and then we carefully navigated home across the much higher portions of unincorporated Acton. And after that, it was one of the nicest days I've ever had. We just sat here with the rain bucketing down, and I knitted, which is why I have so much done now on the Llama Love sweater. I did put a map in, so you can see that little blue dot is us right in the middle of it all. The yellow is the really bad parts. A lot of that missed us. You know, we didn't do too badly in terms of the rain, but I did put a picture in of downtown Acton flooded just after we left it. Now this got into the level of the absurd because on Sunday, the storm hit. But on Saturday, yes, we had a tropical cyclone warning in Acton on Saturday. I have never seen or heard the like, but I did put in my lovely post as a memorial to it because it's like, a cyclone? Are you kidding me? So then you think, okay, so the next day the hurricane hits, and it really hit. I was lying in bed just relaxing because I figured, why get up? This big storm's coming in. It was not raining, and then bang, it was. It hit really hard, like about 8:45 a.m. up here, and you could hear everything began to just belt rain and pour, and you could hear the wind and all that. So, okay, you think, okay, that's good. We had that. And then, we're thinking, okay, so that's it. The cyclone, we didn't get one of those, but we actually did get the hurricane, but it seemed to be a tropical storm, so everything was doing really well. And I'm in the kitchen finishing up my painting, and we were talking about going into downtown before the flooding got out of control. And I was walking across the kitchen, and I missed a step in a weird way and said, that's odd. And then my husband yelled, did you feel that? Yep, 5.0 earthquake. It was actually about 7 clicks from Ojai, so about 25 miles away, but we felt it. And good old Linda down in Ventura said, yep, it was a big one. Ventura's a lot closer to that epicenter than we are, as in like 3 or 4 miles away. And other people in Santa Barbara were checking in saying they felt it. So it's like, okay, we have an earthquake. Meanwhile, the flash floods moved in. And at this point, when I realized, I posted the picture of the flash flood, and Maridee, late of Yarn Over Truck fame, she just recently sold it if the name sounds familiar to you, Maridee wrote back in response to one of my posts and said, bring on the locusts. And good old Michelle Miller said something similar like, what's left? So yes, we had the crazy weekend. And I woke up this morning and the rain was supposed to go until about 6 a.m. And I don't think I remember hearing it. I woke up briefly at about 7 and fell back asleep till about 8. And when I woke up, the clouds were slowly rolling away and things were drying out. And we were pretty much back to normal. My son's school was closed and the local community college was closed. And I think we're all a little sheepish about that. But it's hard to know what roads would be difficult to get through on. Like, it looks really great outside, but there are still flash floods. And we have had a flash flood warning all day here that I think, as I record this on August 21st, Monday at 6:20 p.m., we should be past all that now. So I think we're back in the normal zone, but it's been exciting. Meanwhile, on the calendar, of course, the Cognitive Fiber Retreat 2023, Saturday, November 11th. And the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference is in Anaheim on December 12th through 17th, both in 2023. I am still getting through the crazy at work, switching my Saturday clients to Monday or to wherever they will go. And that process is just about over, really. I've finally made my peace. I think I have one more of these people who is not doing what she needs to do. But otherwise, we're doing pretty well. And so I will be Monday through Friday, starting on September 1st, which really means starting on September 11th. And I do get 3 days at Labor Day, which I really need because, hey, I want to celebrate my birthday. Apart from that, well, we're just kind of rocky at work. A lot of crazy going on with just work issues. No flack against me. I mean, I was getting along with everybody, but we had some interesting experiences with insurance providers. So there we go. And so that's all settling down again. And so Minerva gets the last word. And you can see right there, she's just yawning because, like me this month, Minerva is waiting things out. Because between cyclone warnings and tropical storms and earthquakes and disruption at work, the reality is these things pass and everything will get better. So I think we can take it from Minerva that we did use our ounce of prevention. We got our pound of cure. And we're really just waiting things out for my world to settle down a little bit. So I think that's about it. Thank you. This has been a long one, but it's been a weird week, so I appreciate your patience. And I think I'm just going to end it in the typical way. Please remember, we are a community, so when we help others, we help ourselves just as much as when we help ourselves, we are helping others. So everybody, please, let's be communal. Let's do all the good things. Everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.